You can take my teddy. You look sad, a little girl told the CEO in the park, not knowing. The park was alive with the gentle hum of evening. Golden beams of sunlight poured through the tall trees, scattering across the grass in broken patterns, as if the earth itself had been painted with warm light. Laughter of children echoed in the distance, tiny feet racing, bubbles floating into the air before popping into nothingness. Couples strolled hand in hand along winding paths, their whispers carried by the soft breeze. For most people, it was an ordinary evening, filled with the small joys that life often hides in plain sight. But for Daniel, sitting stiffly on a wooden bench, it was anything but ordinary. His body was present in that park, but his spirit was far away, lost beneath the crushing weight of his thoughts. He wore a crisp, dark suit that seemed out of place among the casual, playful crowd. The tie around his neck felt suffocating, though he hadn't bothered loosening it. His broad shoulders were hunched forward, his elbows resting on his knees, and his gaze fixed on the ground as though the blades of grass held answers he could not find. Daniel was a man the world would envy. The CEO of a major corporation, his name was printed in glossy magazines, praised in business journals, and respected in financial circles. People saw him as a figure of power and control, someone who had conquered life. Yet beneath the surface, he felt hollow. His success had come at a price no one could see. His marriage had crumbled quietly a year ago. His wife had walked away, exhausted from living in a house filled with wealth but empty of warmth. His son, once eager to share every detail of his day, now refused to speak to him, angered by years of broken promises and missed birthdays. That morning had brought yet another blow, a boardroom clash that ended with a failed deal. His colleagues had looked at him differently, questioning his leadership. For the first time in his career, Daniel felt he was losing control. And as he sat in the park that evening, the loneliness of it all pressed heavily against his chest, making it hard to breathe. He rubbed his temples, trying to fight the sting in his eyes. Men like him weren't supposed to cry in public, weren't supposed to show weakness, yet the sadness seeped out of him silently, like water finding cracks in stone. He thought he was invisible there on that bench, just another tired man in a crowd of strangers. But then, two tiny shoes appeared in front of him, small, white sneakers with a scuffed toe and a faint pink ribbon tied at the side. Slowly, Daniel lifted his head, and his weary eyes met the bright, innocent gaze of a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, her hair tied in 2 uneven braids, and in her arms she clutched a teddy bear almost as big as herself. She studied his face with the unfiltered honesty only a child possessed. "You look sad," she said softly, her voice carrying no judgment, only concern. Daniel blinked, momentarily stunned. No one had said that to him in years. Adults pretended not to notice. They saw the suit, the title, the wealth, and assumed he was fine. Yet here was this little girl cutting through the layers of his silence with 4 simple words. Before he could find a reply, she pushed the teddy bear forward with both hands. "Do you want my teddy? He always makes me feel better." The bear's button eyes stared up at him, its fur worn from years of love. Daniel froze, his throat tightening. Why would she offer something so precious to a stranger? Why would you give me your teddy?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The girl tilted her head as though the answer was obvious. "Because Mommy says when people are sad, they need someone to hug them. And Teddy is really good at hugs." Her innocence pierced through the steel armor he had built around his heart. A single tear slipped from the corner of Daniel's eye, and he quickly brushed it away, embarrassed. But the little girl didn't laugh or mock him. She simply stood there, waiting for him to take the bear. With trembling hands he accepted it, pressing the soft toy against his chest. For the first time in years he felt warmth that wasn't born from success or material gain, but from kindness, pure, selfless kindness. His lips curved into the faintest smile, the first real smile he had managed in weeks. "Thank you, little one," he whispered, his voice breaking. The girl grinned, her missing front teeth making her smile even more endearing. She plopped herself onto the bench beside him, swinging her legs happily, as if giving away her teddy. To a sad stranger was the most natural thing in the world. And in that quiet golden evening, surrounded by the joyful noise of the park, Daniel realized something he had forgotten long ago, that sometimes the greatest comfort in life comes, not from wealth, not from power, but from the simplest gestures of love. Daniel sat in silence, the teddy still resting awkwardly in his lap. The little girl beside him seemed completely at ease, her legs swinging back and forth as though the bench were her playground. Her presence was disarming. There was no pretense, no caution, no barrier between her and the world. She was simply there, radiating warmth that seemed to reach the coldest corners of his heart. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly, turning her head toward him, her braids bouncing with the movement. Daniel cleared his throat. It had been so long since anyone had asked him that in such a simple human way, without attaching his title, his company, or his responsibilities. Just his name. "Daniel," he said softly. "And you?" "I'm Lily," she replied proudly, as though her little name carried the weight of something magical. "I come here every day after school with Mommy. But today Mommy is late, so I'm waiting." She hugged her knees and leaned against the bench, looking up at the sky. Daniel studied her for a moment, surprised by how comfortable he felt. He wasn't used to silence that wasn't heavy. Around adults, silence always meant judgment, expectation, or hidden thoughts. But with this child, it felt light, like a pause between giggles. To fill the quiet, Lily began talking again. She spoke about her school, how she had colored a picture of a rainbow, but her teacher said the sky couldn't be purple. "But I think skies can be purple," she said defiantly, her eyes shining. "Have you ever seen the sky at sunset? It's purple sometimes. Teachers don't always know everything." Daniel let out a soft laugh, a sound that surprised even him. It had been months since laughter had slipped so naturally from his chest. "You're right," he said. "The sky can be purple, maybe even pink." Lily nodded with satisfaction, as though she had won an argument with the universe. She went on, talking about her friends, her drawings, and her dream of becoming a doctor. "Doctors fix hearts," she said matter-of-factly, her small hand making the shape of a heart in the air. "And I think fixing hearts is the most important job." Her words struck him with unexpected force. His own heart, broken and heavy, longed for that kind of healing. He wondered if anyone could fix the cracks inside him, or if he had destroyed too much along the way. After a long pause, Lily tilted her head again. "Do you have a daughter?" she asked innocently. Daniel froze. His chest tightened, and for a moment he thought he wouldn't be able to answer. He stared at the ground, then at the teddy bear, before finally nodding. "Yes," he whispered. "But she doesn't talk to me anymore." Lily frowned, as though the idea didn't make sense. "Why not?" "Because I wasn't a good father," Daniel admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "I was too busy. I thought work was more important. I wasn't there when she needed me." The little girl was quiet for a moment, her small face unusually serious. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice as though sharing a secret. "Maybe she just wants to know you love her. Sometimes people say mean things when they're hurt. But my teacher says love is louder than angry words." Daniel's throat tightened again, his eyes stinging. Here he was, the CEO of a powerful company, being taught about love and forgiveness by a 6-year-old with missing teeth. Yet her words carried more truth than anything he had heard in the boardroom or read in self-help books. He turned toward her, studying her tiny face. "You're very wise, Lily," he said softly. She giggled, covering her mouth with her hands. "Mommy says I talk too much, but I think talking helps people feel better." At that moment, a woman's hurried voice broke through the peace. "Lily, there you are!" A lady came rushing toward them, her expression filled with relief and worry. She was young, perhaps in her early 30s, carrying a bag of groceries. She took Lily's hand quickly. "I told you not to bother strangers." Daniel stood immediately, shaking his head. "She wasn't a bother," he said with sincerity that startled even himself. "She was A gift. The woman looked puzzled, not understanding what he meant. But Lily just smiled up at him knowingly. She reached out, squeezed his hand gently, and whispered, "See?" Teddy helped. Daniel felt his heart stir again, touched by a kindness he hadn't realized he needed. As the mother led Lily away, her small figure turned back once more, waving enthusiastically. And for the first time in years, Daniel waved back, not as a CEO, not as a man burdened with regrets, but as someone who remembered what it felt like to be seen. That night, Daniel returned to his penthouse overlooking the sprawling city. From the outside, the apartment was perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished marble floors, elegant furniture that looked as if it belonged in a design magazine. But inside, the silence was crushing. No laughter echoed through the halls. No footsteps padded across the rooms. It was a palace without warmth, a home without a heartbeat. He dropped his keys on the counter and loosened his tie, the tension of the day still weighing heavy on his shoulders. The city lights blinked below like scattered diamonds, but to him they felt distant, unreachable. For years he had told himself these lights were what he worked for, the view, the status, the empire he had built with his bare hands. But tonight, they felt like a cruel reminder of everything he had lost along the way. He sank into the leather chair by the window. The teddy bear Lily had pressed into his arms, still vivid in his memory. He had returned it to her, but the warmth of that moment clung to him. He could almost hear her small voice again. Love is louder than angry words. Daniel leaned his head back, his eyes burning. He thought of his daughter, Emily. He could see her as she used to be, running down the hallway in her pajamas, squealing with laughter, begging him to read her one more bedtime story. He remembered the smell of her hair when she hugged him, the way she used to look at him with pure adoration. And then he remembered the years that followed, the missed birthdays, the broken promises, the empty chair at school recitals. He had always said, next time, but next time never came. Eventually, Emily stopped waiting. She stopped calling him Daddy. She stopped looking at him with those shining eyes. He had been too late, or so he believed. But Lily's innocent wisdom lingered like a whisper in his ear. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Maybe love was louder. Maybe one phone call could be the first step toward healing. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his phone. He stared at the screen for a long time, scrolling through the contacts until he found her number. His thumb hovered over it, his heart racing. Fear clawed at him. Fear of rejection, of silence, of hearing his daughter's voice cold and distant. But then he thought of Lily's tiny hands pushing that teddy bear into his lap. If a little girl could give away her most precious treasure to comfort a stranger, then surely he could muster the courage to make this call. With a deep breath, he pressed the button. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Each ring felt like an eternity. He almost hung up, his chest tightening, when suddenly, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, guarded. Daniel froze. That voice, it was older than he remembered, more mature, but it was hers. "Emily." "Dad?" she said cautiously. Tears pricked his eyes at the sound. He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "It's me," he whispered. I just wanted to hear your voice. I know I don't deserve it, but I miss you. I miss you more than words can say." There was silence. A long, heavy silence that stretched across the line. Daniel held his breath, waiting for the click of disconnection, bracing for rejection. But instead, he heard a faint inhale. "Why now?" Emily asked, her voice breaking slightly. "After all this time, why are you calling now?" Daniel closed his eyes, gripping the phone tightly. "Because I was reminded today that love matters more than anything else. I forgot that. I forgot you, and I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I don't want to lose you forever. Please, just let me try." His words hung in the air, fragile and uncertain. On the other end, Emily said nothing, But she didn't hang up either. For Daniel, that small act, her staying on the line, was enough. It was a crack in the wall he had built between them, a sliver of light piercing through the darkness. As he sat by the window, phone pressed against his ear, he felt something shift inside him. He thought of Lily and her teddy bear, of her simple faith that hearts could be fixed, and for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to believe it. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if Emily would forgive him, or if they could rebuild what was lost. But he knew one thing: he would keep trying. Because life's greatest wealth was not his company, his money, or his success. It was the chance to love, to be loved, and to choose, every day, not to give up. And so, in that quiet night, with the city glowing beneath him and hope stirring faintly in his chest, Daniel held on to the phone, waiting for a word, a sign, a beginning. And somewhere deep inside, he whispered a silent thank you to a little girl in the park who had reminded him of the simplest truth. Even the hardest hearts could soften when touched by kindness.